one thing that all the spiritual teachings of the great masters have in common. That is the important lesson of attachment and letting go. Today we'll take a look at what our teachers this year, the Stoics, think about the question of attachment and what we can actually do about our tendency to get attached and cause misery for ourselves in the process. Psychologists tell us, of course, that attachment is the most natural thing in the world. It is an emotional, biological necessity. Basically, we are born that way so that we attach to our parents. So babies instinctively cry for their parents and are calmed when they are physically comforted. So it's how we actually develop attachment to our parents that creates attachment and attachment issues and patterns for the rest of our lives. According to psychologists, there are three kinds of attached people when it comes to relationships. And really, it's attachment to people that we are most interested in, although what we say for the Stoics will also apply to attachment to things. So, three kinds of attached people. There are those people who are the so-called secure attached type, and that's apparently about half the population. And there are those people that are the anxious attached type and the avoidant attached type. And each of those are maybe about another quarter of the population. So the secure attached type is kind of the ideal. It's a person who can be intimate without really worrying about little misunderstandings. You accept the little things about your partner you don't really like, and you continue to treat them with love and respect no matter what. Playing games is really not that style. It's about being direct, sharing, responding, many of the things we think of ideal and normal in a relationship. So you don't take things personally, you're not overreactive, you don't become defensive, you really try and solve problems, forgive, apologize, all of those things that make a relationship thrive. It's good news that about half of us are able to do that. Then we get the anxious attachment type, people who want to be close and are able to be close. But in order to do so, they make sacrifices, they want to please their partner all the time and become very unhappy when their own needs are not being met. So these people are thinking about the relationship all the time, very tuned into every move the partner makes and worrying about the slightest thing and worrying about something that was negative and might be misunderstood or how you understood something, and then unfortunately often makes it worse by manipulating the partner to get more attention or to get reassurance of some kind, acting out, being emotional, maybe even annoying the partner in the end, provoking in some kind of way. Jealousy is even a symptom of the anxious attached mind. Maybe you recognize yourself there. Or in the avoidant attached mind, still a type, still a significant part of the population. People who tend to avoid closeness or have relationships with people far away or that allow them to maintain a lot of freedom and independence and mostly to delay commitment. And then these types of people, once they are attached, they'll often create a mental distance. There are things that are not quite right about this relationship, I don't know, or focusing on individual flaws and saying, it's not like a relationship I had in the past, and those kind of things are ways to actually not become too involved. So these kind of people are really over concerned about their partners trying to control them or limit their freedom in any kind of way, and might also you might even dismiss your partner's feelings about things, and often, of course, get the complaint that you are distant and you're not open, or you're keeping feelings secret, or you're keeping secrets and just not sharing feelings. And often it will seem to you as if your partner seems needy, but actually that neediness even makes you feel strong and self-sufficient. You don't care if the relationship's going to end or threatened, or you don't think that anything that changes in the relationship will worry you. All of those kind of things are symptoms of the avoidance of attachment type of person. Of course, some of us are different things at different times, and we probably play out some of those patterns at different times, but I'm sure you recognized yourself in there in the process anyway. And of course, it's nothing new. The ancients recognized that we attach very easily, and that our attachment to other people is one of the greatest sources of pain and misery in our lives. The Stoics, of course, being the Stoics, are also going to offer some solutions to the problem of attachment. And it must be said at the outset, like many things that come from great philosophers and great teachers, it's not always as perfectly palatable an idea as something simple and easy and just do this. Because the philosophers ask us to confront ourselves. They're continuously asking us to ask ourselves the question, what does it mean to be human? And more importantly, they are asking us to be honest about being human. The Stoic understanding of attachment and the solution to attachment is to look the human condition firmly in the eye and be honest with it. So what I'm talking about today primarily comes from Epictetus. He starts off his dialogue by saying, often, and I'm paraphrasing of course because he doesn't speak in this modern way, often our worries about attachment are really about the other person being attached to us. I can't leave my partner because he or she heavily depends on me, or I can't go and live in another city because my parent heavily depends on me or someone else does. And we kind of paint ourselves as fine, but somehow encumbered by the other person. Epictetus tells us that if you stay in a relationship because you don't want to hurt another person, you're allowing their problems and their unresolved emotional issues to become your evil. Basically, we must be responsible for our own issues. So if anyone suffers misfortune, he says, it's their own fault, because everyone has the resources within themselves to enjoy happiness and peace of mind. It's their compulsions which are interfering with your happiness and your peace of mind. I mean, he says, if other people are inconsolable, or you are inconsolable, and so you're losing someone, or they're losing you, he says, how do you reach the point where you considered someone else as your possession, so that you are all inconsolable and kind of self-pitying if you lose them? They aren't yours, he says. When you love someone, remember, like everything else, they are mortal. They could die, or more commonly, they could leave. Sooner or later, people move on. We don't stay in one place all the time. Epictetus regularly reminds us we are not plants. And he starts off with the simple reason that we don't stay in one place for a long period of time. And we know that about ourselves. So why do we get upset if someone moves? It seems to be normal. Why are we getting upset for what's normal? He says, don't take delight in pleasure as if it would last forever. Life experience proves that it doesn't. People move on, things change, and things end. So ultimately, when we shed tears for someone who leaves, he says, are you not shedding tears for yourself? In fact, even when we shed tears for someone who dies, do we not shed tears for ourselves? Is it not we who experience loss when someone leaves or dies? And so we shed tears for ourselves. And we shed tears for ourselves because we have lost someone. We all use that phrase, I lost my friend. I lost my loved one. And Epictetus will pick on that word my and say, was that person ever actually yours? How do you lose something that isn't actually yours? I mean, Epictetus goes on to say how birds cross the sea without groaning and yearning for their former home. And he says, is that because they're not rational creatures? Because that's what the argument people give. It says, and people give that argument about animals suffering and animals experiencing grief. They say, oh, it's because they're not rational creatures that they don't experience those things. They don't experience grief because they don't think about what they've lost, and they don't experience pain and yearning because they're not thinkers. But Epictetus says, well, then what you're saying is that the reason we do is because we think. And does that mean that the function of the rational mind and the value of the rational mind is to make us miserable? Is reason for the purposes of emotion and misery? Doesn't quite make sense. We cannot be happy and yearn for things that are not at hand. Happiness and yearning do not go together, says Epictetus, as evidenced by that whale or anyone who is yearning for something that is not there. You are making yourself unhappy, especially since, as we know, people move around, and he says people are not trees that all stay in one place. So if you're unhappy that someone is not there, you're expecting them kind of to be like a little bit of a tree. And of course, if you're yearning for a person and feeling grief at not seeing them, you're also yearning for something which is not yours, since we've established that people are not ours. He says if you mourn and want, if you want a person, if you yearn for a person, and a person is not yours, he says, is that then any difference to desire and greed, those other emotions which distract us and remove us from our spiritual paths? That's a very powerful thought to kind of catch yourself on when you are in those times of yearning for something that isn't yours, and especially when that is a person, because a person is not yours. We use it. My child, my mother, my husband, my wife. We say my, but we mustn't get confused into thinking they belong to us. It's only a relation that we are describing, not a possession that we are describing. You know, I'm talking about people, and one of the contexts of people is, of course, the social environment, and Epictetus does actually make some comments on how we interact with the larger world out there. Epictetus is writing nearly 2,000 years ago, and yet his words apply so well to the world of social media. Epictetus talks about news arriving by mail and arriving in the city, and we all hear what just happened in Athens, and we all hear what just happened in Rome. He's writing in the ancient days. We can easily compare that to regular media like TV and social media, which we are deeply attached to both of those things. We watch the news on TV voraciously as if it was about us, as if it belonged to us. And he says especially news about places far away and things far away. I mean, especially news about places where you are not. Whatever your reason for being interested in that place, being upset about something that is happening where you are not makes no sense. He says, isn't it enough to be unhappy where you actually are, but you want to be unhappy by correspondence? That's got nothing to do with you. It's out of your purvey, and it isn't actually affecting you. It might in your mind affect you if you make a whole bunch of connections to it, but something far away does not affect you. So it might sound a bit harsh, and it might sound like I'm not supposed to care. It isn't even about caring. It's about how you allow things to affect you. If you're able to watch the news without being affected by it, watch the news. But otherwise, why watch the news? Why do you actually need to know what's happening on the other side of the world? It's important to be informed, and it's important to know what's going on. We hear that all the time, and it kind of feels true, but is it really true? I mean, it's not like we can do anything about it. It's not like it directly means we've got to change whatever we were doing that day. There isn't really any reason to allow ourselves to engage in and be affected by everything that has nothing to do with us. In the end, our attachment, he says, is based on our failure to account for how the world really is. Eventually, someone will get sick. Eventually, someone will move. Eventually, someone will die. Don't get upset at things which are natural, obvious, and predictable. Epictetus says, stay away from people who do nothing but get up, eat, and yawn, and then read and write whatever they feel like, and then talk nonsense in order to win applause from their friends. Now, that really could be talking about social media, because we know that people do post in order to get likes. And so that is an attachment itself, and that will cause us to want the same thing if we attach ourselves to people like that. I mean, in other language, Epictetus is saying stay away from social media because you're going to become just like them. If you get caught into that trap of posting in order to get likes and in order to air your opinions because it gets a reaction and all of that, you're getting sucked into it, and you're going to become just like those people who live in order to create reactions and achieve their desires in that way. He says, someone who is virtuous and good never acts for the sake of appearances, but only for the sake of having acted rightly. Anyone who seeks a greater reward for doing good things must be a child, because children seek rewards when they do something good, and we teach them that. We reward them. We give them gold stars and cookies and other kinds of rewards. Even sadly, love is very often given as a reward. If you do that, you get a snuggle and a cuddle and a kiss. So it's only children who do things for rewards, and as I've said, even that's a little bit dubious. But other than that, we should do things for the reward of having done or acted rightly. So, he says, never become dependent on other people, and never become self-abasing to another person. Never lower yourself and excessively humble yourself to another person. Don't put yourself in situations where you depend on others. Depend on their approval or depend on anything else from them. Depend on yourself. So, how do we acquire freedom from attachment? How do we get happy wherever we are, whatever happens? Well, the most basic step is to learn what is not yours. Says Epictetus, property is not yours. Relations are not yours. Family, reputation, familiar places, conversations with other people. None of these things are yours because they all go and they're all outside of your control. The only thing that is yours is your reactions, your impressions, your thoughts, your responses. So don't allow others to have power over you. Even if you allow the government or the president to have power over you and your impressions, you are not free. It doesn't mean that what they do is not relevant to us. It doesn't mean that when a government such as ours discusses policies and politics, and especially these days out there in the open, out there on the news and in the press and all of those places where we've been cautioned about, does it mean that we shouldn't care and shouldn't react? That they can go on chatting about policy changes which worry people and we should just sit there and do nothing? Is that the same as just letting them do whatever they want? No, that's not what Epictetus is suggesting. Epictetus is saying that if you sit there reading the news or social media or seeing it, whatever, and get upset and angry and scream and shout and make changes to something that you're doing and all of those kind of things, you are in reaction to other people. You are in effect of them, and you are allowing them to control you. the government can make you unhappy one day and happy the next day. It's kind of like we're all the rand, going up when everything's happy and going down when everything's bad, and up and down and up and down, and it's crazy. It's like a roller coaster, and we are too. One day the government says we're going to clear up the corruption and the rand improves and everyone's happy. And the next day the government says we're going to look into land expropriation and everyone is screaming and everyone is unhappy and down goes the rand and up and down and up and down. We can easily see that makes no sense. We can easily see that's wrong. Even when we all talk about the rand in reaction to everything like that, we know how ridiculous it is. It's crazy. Every time someone says something, the rand goes in another direction. Well, it's just as crazy for us to do that. It's just as crazy to allow our emotions and our happiness and our feelings and our security to go up and down in relation to everything that the government says. It isn't a magical answer to the fact that a government might make policies that people don't like. It doesn't give a license to a government to be oppressive or destructive or any of those kind of things. All that they are saying, all that Epictetus, the freed slave, was saying is that be master of your own world. Be master of your own reactions. Don't allow someone else to provoke them. And the best way to not allow someone to provoke them is don't engage in things that have nothing to do with you. If you're worried about policies and politics, the thing is to do something, not to sit there in reaction and say, my life is affected by what they do. I can't do the following because of what they do. I'm going to be left, bereft, poor, or whatever because of what they do. Again, we are asked to look at ourselves, to reflect on ourselves and ask ourselves, what do I actually have control over? Why am I getting upset by something that I don't? You might think that as long as they don't make those policy changes, you're fine. But you don't have control over yourself. You don't have control over what their policy covers, the land or the money or whatever it may be. And the fact is, as Epictetus keeps on telling us, things do not stay the same. The experience of life on earth is that something will change. If you allow unhappiness to be because something changed, then you're denying the nature of reality. So Epictetus says you can train yourself. You can train yourself to not be overly attached and to not get caught into the negative emotional patterns that result from it. So whenever you find yourself becoming attached to someone or something, think of them like glass, a beautiful piece of glass. It's beautiful, but it's not permanent and it probably will break. He says, and this is a very famous quote, when you kiss your child, your brother, your friend, tell yourself in your mind, tomorrow you die. Remember that everyone you love will die. They could be dead tomorrow. It's a very powerful thought. We find it a little scary because modern people, we pretend that death doesn't exist. We live in a world where, death doesn't happen in our imaginations. We try keep people alive forever, and we ignore talk about death. We have every euphemism in the book about it, and we push it aside. We think of it as wrong somehow, but it still happens every single time. So when you kiss the one you love, remember that they are mortal, and remember that you yourself are mortal, so that you love them even more today. It doesn't darken the love, it brightens the love, because if you loved everyone as if they were going to die tomorrow, your love would know no bounds. Who you love and what you love, says Epictetus, is not yours. It has been granted to you just for the present, not irrevocably, and not forever, just like a piece of fruit. It's only for a season. Don't long for a fig in winter, says Epictetus, or when you take delight in something, remind yourself it's going to die, it's going to change. So is that wrong? Is it wrong to look at the grape and know that there's going to be wine, that the grape doesn't last forever, but it can become wine, and the wine doesn't last forever. The bottle will become empty. Those are all normal. And the same is true for everything else that we love and everything else that we have. Remember that we are of nature. We came into the world when the world wanted us, and we leave when it wants us no longer. And so, says Epictetus, a virtuous person lives happily where he is, trying to be his best self, trying to be part of something greater, but never wanting or owning any of it, and happy to let it go. And even if nobody notices or cares, be content that you are living a happy life. Never enough of the lessons from the Stoics, and always a good way to learn when your buttons get pushed, and maybe some of us had a few of them pushed. I'll be back next week with the month ahead. It's already nearly the end of August, and hopefully predicting some rain for next month. Join us Friday at the usual time. See you then.